it is true to say that in this country, the older you are, the more likely you are to vote. And if you actually talk to politicians, as Nick and I do on a daily basis, both in public, on the airwaves, and in private, of course, they are very, very, very clear that they've got to get re-elected. That's part of the job description of being a politician and being an MP. And therefore, I think it is true to say that in recent years, to some extent, policies feel like they've been skewed towards the interests of older people and away from the interests of younger people. And I do think, by the way, there are others who reject the idea that kind of it's a zero-sum game. They reject the idea that if you do something that's good for old people, it's necessarily bad for younger people. I'm not sure about that. I think actually there are policies which would help young people, which we've not seen in this country. But the only other thing I'd say, Emily, is what determines whether or not you get a change in policy is really whether or not people think, the government of the day thinks it's more likely to help them get re-elected. And actually, there's a really interesting development here, which is that it's generally been thought that if you lowered the voting age, it would help people on the left of politics. It would help people like the SNP and Labour and Greens and supporters of independents like Jeremy Corbyn, as he is now. And actually, if you look around the world, I'm not sure that's entirely happening. Around the world, lots and lots of young people are increasingly moving to the right in response to all the phenomena that we talk about on this podcast. So whether or not it happens, I think, is becoming a more complicated calculation.
Yeah, Labour have always been in favour of it, or in recent years at least. There were votes for 16 and 17-year-olds in the Scottish referendum back in 2014. And as you say, Amol, it's been parties to the left that have been in favour and parties to the right that have said, hold on, you're not yet got the responsibilities of full adulthood at the age of 16, and therefore you shouldn't have the privileges of having a vote. That is how the argument goes. But it'll be interesting to see what someone like Nigel Farage says. There's quite interesting evidence now that reform did particularly well amongst teenagers. I mean, in terms of support, they quite possibly didn't have the vote, but 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds, particularly boys, are a target market for Nigel Farage. He says if he gets them now, that means he'll get their support in 2029 at the next general election. He's appealing to them via social media, particularly TikTok. There's evidence here in France, where I'm this morning, that the National Rally, Le Pen's party, has done particularly well on social media with younger men as well. So that may alter the calculation about whether parties on the left want to give the votes to younger people, because, yeah, there's principle at stake. But I'm afraid, Emily, there's always a calculation. In whose interest is it to change who gets the vote?